This is the Nomad Futurist podcast, a podcast about the evolution of technology, society, and transformation. Connect with us, share your thoughts with us at nomadfuturist.com. Let's get this started. Here are Phil and Nabeel.
Hello. Welcome to Nomad Futurist. This is your co-host, Nabeel Mahmood from Scottsdale, Arizona.
This is your co-host, Phillip Koblence from Montclair, New Jersey.
And this is Melissa Olson coming from Kingsburg, California.
Oh, Melissa, I thought it was the metropolitan Fresno.
Hey, what is Kingsburg?
It is. I'm outside of Fresno.
All right. Well, that's in the middle of nowhere for those who don't know where it is. It's actually supposed to be the world capital of fruits and nuts.
It is.
Yeah. And for those that are probably listening to this and don't know this fact, that I actually did a little bit spell in Central California in Fresno for a few years. It was bloody hot. Anyway. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. It's certainly Fresno is an interesting place to be in, considering that you're in the data center space. So let's get to know you a little bit. What do you do currently and how did you get into this space?
Absolutely. So I'm currently the business development manager for data centers for Belimo Americas. For those who don't know Belimo, we are a manufacturer of valves, actuators, and sensors. So we're focused on the cooling side of data centers. I, like most people, I think, stumbled into data centers. My degree is in mechanical engineering, and right out of college, I worked for a mechanical contractor designing mechanical systems, and that's actually how I started in data centers, primarily with on-prem, and we did actually the PC landing station in Grover Beach as well. My next job was in controls and did some more data centers, but it wasn't until I was at Belimo that I really got into data centers because I was covering Silicon Valley. So again, ended up in it almost by chance because of the job that I was in. And then Belimo decided to focus on data centers more intently about 4 years ago and started working in data centers full time at that point.
Brilliant. So 99% of the people actually have fallen into the space that we know of, that we have interviewed over the last 4.5, 5 years, and now purely by an accident. Now, you went to college, UC Davis, that's a party school, right? Is that really true? Is it?
Most of the people that I went to school with went to Chico to party, so I never considered Davis a party school. It was just the proximity to Chico.
Yeah. So where I was going with that was, okay, so you went to UC Davis, you got a degree in mechanical engineering. What was the driving factor behind that, considering that you grew up in the Central Valley, right? It's a highly farm-driven community and being the world capital of fruits and nuts. How did you end up picking mechanical engineering as your focus of study?
Yeah, that's a great question. I always liked the way things work. I grew up because it is the land of fruits and nuts and a lot of agricultural. My dad ran a heavy equipment company that did ag land development. So I grew up around really big tractors and really big pieces of equipment and always liked knowing how they worked. I also grew up around airplanes because my dad has had his pilot's license since he was 16. So I originally thought I was going to go to college and build and design airplanes is what my intent was. But it was, if I look at my childhood, it was always how things work, taking them apart. I was more interested in all of the toys that we're building versus the Barbie. And so when I went to college, thought I was going to build airplanes, thought I was going to go aeronautical. But then once I got into my program, I loved fluids and thermodynamics. They were what I really liked. And so my focus then became either power generation or HVAC. And thinking I would come back to the Central Valley, HVAC was the path for me. So that's really how I ended up in mechanical from the get-go.
So when you were going to college and you, at this point in time, you figured out what your major was going to be, did you know that there was a sector that existed that was the foundation of the global economy?
No clue. No clue at all. And at UC Davis, I would think like most universities, there's so much that's around research and whatever the professors are researching. There was nothing about infrastructure at that point. So there was no exposure for me.
So mechanical engineering, I have to imagine, it's a unique story, right? You grow up on essentially a farm with tractors, no Barbies, tinkering, taking things apart, with a dad as a pilot, right? So you have a fairly unique outlook. Were there a lot of women in the mechanical engineering world at UC Davis?
No, there was not. I think my class started with 6 women and ended with 3.
And what was the reason why they quit?
It was really tough in mechanical. Mechanical has one of the lowest percentages of women anyways. I think just because of the nature of it, most women steer towards other kinds of engineering. Most of the women quit for different reasons and generally shifted their major to a different type of engineering.
So what was that experience like being one of the 3 women in these engineering courses? Did you run into any of the, kind of gender-based blocks in, even in that area? I mean, you think of university as maybe a safe space, and then once you get into real industry, you'll see some of those things. But did you see some of that given the gender concentration engineering courses?
Oh, absolutely, you did. It's definitely my experience was it was easier in college versus being in the industry, but it was definitely there. Absolutely.
All right. Siblings. Any siblings?
Yes, I have an older sister and a younger brother.
And any of them in this space?
No, they are not. My sister is a stay-at-home mom. She has 6 children, so she is at home
She's
with them.
busy.
It is.
Thanks.
Yep. And then my brother, being in an ag area, works in refrigeration.
All right. So there
Refrigeration,
is
I
a
guess, is
commonality of mechanical in some way, form, or shape.
clearly
Uh,
you came from a place that's stiflingly hot. So you're like, we need to cool things. We need to cool it.
yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
Phil, you don't want to know what the temperature over there is right now.
You know what? I think we're on like I'm gonna go with 20th day in a row of 90 degrees and 90% humidity in Jersey. And I can only imagine. I've seen like the Death Valley temperatures and stuff. And it's 120s, 130s. I think it hit 131 in Death Valley last week. That's nuts.
We're only at 114, so
140. It's pretty much. It's
Only.
basically Alaska. It's basically Alaska. Get your parkas out.
Exactly.
It's 114.
Yeah. Well, I can imagine jumping into that pool right now. All right. So you decide to go to college, you get a degree in mechanical engineering. At that point in time, did you have a direction as to what vertical you were interested in? I mean, what we're trying to discover is the career pathways, right? Data centers are on the forefront now. It's something that nobody talked about till COVID. Like we were the best kept secret. We build the worst buildings. We basically are really good at building prisons. And it's something that nobody talks about. That's the challenge in the space. We don't have a good narrative. We don't create that level of excitement for people to come into the space. So out of curiosity, and certainly you being one of the newbies in the space, in the grand scheme of things, what was the direction that led you to where you're at today? I mean, can you walk us through that journey?
oh, I wish I could say I had a direction and I had intent on my path, but there was no intent. It was truly falling into it. When I got out of my engineering program, my decision was going to be either HVAC or power generation, and I chose HVAC. The reality is I ended up in data centers because a friend of mine left contracting and went to work for one of the hyperscalers, and she'll kill me if I say her name and where she works. But it was she left contracting, went to this hyperscaler, and because we had had a previous relationship, she called me and said, "We are having a problem with these dampers and actuators. Can you help me?" And that's really how I got all into data centers. That's when she called for help, started working with the company she works with directly, and then went down that path. It was truly stumbled into it absolutely by chance. Had I known anything about data centers, I would have absolutely gone towards it and tried to make it my path because now I love data centers. And I would say them from an engineering perspective, I think the most exciting thing you can do because it's evolving so quickly and they're pushing the limits on so many fronts of how do we build better, more sustainably, higher density, and do it all very, very quickly. You just don't see that in any other engineering field that I know of.
The thing
Brilliant.
is, you looked at power generation and cooling. I mean, it's not really that far, those many degrees of separation from, what makes a data center tick. And I think that what we're trying to do, right, with the foundation in general is we're trying to expose our industry to the younger generation to make them aware that it's not just magic, in the cloud somewhere. There's actually buildings or prisons, as Nabeel puts them, that house all of their TikToks and all of their Apple storage, et cetera, et cetera. But how much of the journey do you think, like you learn so much through the ins and outs within the HVAC industry, and you're able to apply that directly into the data center? If you went straight into the data center industry, you might not have gotten the type of real world experience that you got going through the path that you did. So how much of your love of the perspective that the data center brings is born out of that kind of initial experience that you had going kind of a more traditional mechanical engineering path?
That's an interesting question. I would think if I had gone straight into it, I still would have had a love for it, but I wouldn't have necessarily known how unique it is from a comparison standpoint. Starting in the traditional mechanical world and traditional office buildings and hospitals and schools, the way they build and the way the industry changes is very, very slow in comparison. And so I just wouldn't have had the appreciation for how quickly the data center space is evolving. That being said, if I go back even 5 years ago, the data center space was still moving relatively slow too. I look at the leap they've had in the last 5 years, and particularly the major adoption of liquid cooling. And they're moving much, much faster now and evolving the way we design much faster than they have in the past.
I'm always curious. We've actually become the core topic of discussion these days. And the fact that we are available and accessible at fingertips. Our narrative seems to not do justice to us. We don't have a good story, yet we are the basis of every story. How do you tell people within your network that are not from this sector as to what you do?
Oh, I wish I had a good way of describing it as well. I'm not good at it either, with the exception of talking to them about what they use their phones for. And even our discussion right now using Zoom, of that has to be using a data center somewhere, and everything in the data center is creating heat that we have to cool to keep it operating. I feel like I do a better job of describing it to my children than I do to adults, because they just want to know that when they play Netflix, it works. They want to know when they play Minecraft, it works. It's almost easier, I think, to explain it to a child than an adult at this stage.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's something that needs to be really worked on. I mean, we need to do a better job as a sector, that we are the foundation of everything, connectivity, banking, to agriculture as well. And when I did my little stint in Fresno, California, Phil, for those of you who don't know that, it was good to see the fact that the old God is changing, and even that farming community is open to the idea of bringing forth technology and leveraging that. So they were starting to deploy drones, for instance. They were trying to get more automation in place. But as a sector, we need to do a good job in our narrative and our messaging.
I think
Now,
it starts with like making people aware of
Mhm.
how the stuff that they're using works, right?
Mhm.
So that's where a lot of the programs that we're doing with kids come into play, so that it's not this black box that, it either works or it doesn't. And if you're like my kids were and the iPad stops working, you just freak out and start banging on it. If you understand, and I think agriculture is a perfect example, right? So much of what agriculture does is like critical thinking and looking at you have a problem, right? And you look to solve that problem, understanding like what the end goal is. So when it
Mhm,
comes to leveraging the drones and leveraging the different irrigation systems and stuff, you don't think of that as huge technological advancement, because you always look at farming as not necessarily agri-tech, but all the things that have happened since the 1700s to the 1800s to the 1900s, all of those changes in how farms operate are the
mhm,
same kind of critical thinking ability that we try to leverage. Even on the compute side, it might be slightly more complicated and more boards and more circuitry and all that stuff, but it really is understanding that kind of 30,000-foot view and being able to articulate what is the problem that we're trying to solve for, and then how do we get there. I'm sorry, I interrupted, but that's what I do best.
Phil is now a farmer.
Right.
Farmer
Yes,
Phil.
yes, I know exactly what's going on with agriculture. One time I did some hydroponic weed farming. No, I didn't. I should.
Uh-oh. Well, it's all right. It's legal now.
Let's let
Well,
Melissa
that's
chime in.
California. I want to see you on a tractor.
Right? I would love it. I would love it. I would
Yeah.
probably hurt someone, but I'd love it.
Yeah, I can only imagine Phil being on a tractor that we kind of like making off the city slickers.
Oh, you know what? I think we have like you could do a little camp, like for the urban folks to see what it's like a little camping, like agriculture farming vacation. I think
There you go. Well, that probably might be on the roster here soon.
right. Let's do it.
Going back to you and talking about your background. So you got an engineering degree, and now I see that you're in business development sales. Could you walk us through that cycle and how that played out?
Yeah. So most engineers don't Once I don't like people, most engineers are introverts, which I by nature am an introvert, but I like people. And so I decided pretty early on in my career that I didn't want to be behind a screen and doing design in that respect. I wanted to be working with people. And so that's how I ended up in what was originally sales roles and then business development, that I want to be solving people's problems from an engineering perspective, but working with people in the process. So it's been, I would say I'm a learned extrovert because I'm still very much, my nature is introverted, but it's so fun for me from an engineering perspective to be able to work directly with customers, talk to them about their problems, talk to them about what's coming in the future for them and how they need to build data centers, not just that work for them today, but will work for them for the next 10 years, and how we solve that from an engineering perspective.
Now, being an introvert and being an engineer, and I've seen you in action. We've actually had the opportunity to be on stage, I believe, a couple of times together. There is a stereotypical mindset that people have, like, oh yeah, you're in sales now, so you're kind of sleazy and wash your hands a couple of times after you shake your hands. How did you get past that? And do you see that to be in our sector as well?
Oh, absolutely. And I, in some respects, agree with that view of some people who are truly salespeople. It can be that way. So for me, I look at it as my title is business development, but I'm here to solve people's problems with the products that we have. And that's really the way I try to focus on it. It's been interesting, especially in the data center space. You go to a lot of these data center shows and there's different types of, I'm going to say, passes for vendors versus non-vendors. And I took offense to it at first because I don't look at myself in that same capacity. But then I would walk around with friends of mine who work for data center companies. And the way people approach them is they are traditional salespeople. So for me, my focus is how I approach it and not putting myself into that same category of I'm here to solve a problem, not to sell something.
One of the things I would want you to address is the fact, I mean, I've been in this space, as well as been in this space for 2.5 decades. I mean, this has been our life. And we consider this space to be sort of like a fraternity, in a way. I mean, these relationships that have been developed over decades. You have had the opportunity to work in different verticals, in different sectors. How does our sector compare to others that you've been part of?
Coming into data centers was very, very difficult. As you said, it's kind of like a fraternity, and a lot of people in the data center space have been here a very, very long time. Had I not had 16 years of experience before coming into data centers, I don't know that I would have stayed because it was so difficult to come into them. And I will have to give the caveat that I came in during COVID as well. So my first data center show, it just very much felt like it was an established group. They weren't letting outsiders in. And at that point, I was definitely an outsider. So it was very difficult to come into that. But that's also what has driven me to try to make sure that other women are brought in and feel like that they can find a home in the data center space and in this market.
Do you think our sector is welcoming? Do we welcome different perspective, point of views? We talk about the diversity, not just gender related, but beliefs, culture, diversity of thought, experiences. Do you think, in your experience, are we doing a good enough job? Are we getting there to be well rounded and being open?
I think we are, absolutely. I think the hardest thing is because there's such an established, what I'm going to call an old guard, and I don't want to offend anyone by that, but there
How
are a lot
dare
of folks.
you?
What's that?
How dare you?
There are really, really great people in the data center space, but
Oh, there are
both
so
of
many
you,
awful people. There's so many awful people.
wait, you probably, the people that you work with, you've probably been working with for however many years. And so it's tough when you're the newbie coming into it to feel like you're included in that. And that's fair because you have 20 plus years of relationships and you can't get that overnight. As far as being open to new ideas and inclusiveness, I think, yes, absolutely, we are there. It is coming in as the newbie that's just a difficult process.
I think there's a
Yeah.
there's magic. There's magic, right? When you go into kind of a sales role, a business development role, but you have a background of engineering, you have instant credibility because you actually know the thing that you're selling in a way that, and I don't think people tend to focus on how amazing that track is, like to understand the mechanics of it, the engineering behind it, the use cases, the way your customers are leveraging this technology, and then be able to come from a place of experience and then sell it to them. It's the perfect combination. And it's brought together by this ability to kind of, grow out of your kind of introvertedness and become more able to be comfortable in your own skin and speaking and speaking your mind and not shirking away from uncomfortable situations. How did that transition happen? Did you make a specific effort to say, I'm going to insert myself into these conversations? Was it just experience based where you got comfortable enough with what was going on that you started speaking your mind? Or did you take like an acting class and you're like, screw this, I'm going to picture everyone naked with black socks on and I'm just going to go for it?
It was a lot of coaching. I think back to my first job, and my boss, I still remember we would walk out of meetings and he would laugh at me because he's like, you are just so about business of like just getting down to let's talk about the problem, solve the problem and move on. Like no niceties, no anything else. And so a lot of it for me was coaching, and from early on had bosses and mentors that really helped me grow in that respect, from being able to have more of that relationship building. And then as I had other roles, started speaking, one of the biggest growth segments for me, I would say, was ASHRAE. And for people in the data center space, you may not be familiar with ASHRAE. ASHRAE is the American Society of Heating, Refrigeration, and Air Conditioning Engineers. Hence the reason we call it ASHRAE, because you don't want to say that over and over again. But I joined ASHRAE early on in my career and went through all of the chair positions, the board positions. And that forced me to learn to speak in front of people and in front of bigger and bigger groups, to be able to manage teams of people that are volunteers. So that's what I would say was my biggest way to grow in learning how to deal with people, work with people, and speak in a public setting.
You got to force yourself to do it. I think it's a brilliant way to do it, right? As you get in there, you start volunteering, and it's not like there's no choice. Like you just throw yourself into the deep end of the pool, and the way you learn how to speak to people is to put yourself in a position where you have to speak to people.
Yeah, sometimes
Absolutely.
you have to be uncomfortable to be comfortable.
Yeah, I find myself uncomfortable constantly.
Well,
It's
you
just
are just extremely uncomfortable. All right. So now I know that you're actually a part of some of the Women in Tech initiatives. You are also working with the Women Innovation Lab with AFCOM in Northern California as well. Could you share some of those ventures and initiatives that you're engaged in?
Yeah, absolutely. So coming into the data center space was difficult. And one of the things that I found difficult was I was trying to find something similar to ASHRAE and just couldn't find it, especially in this area. At the time, there was no active 7 by 24 chapter in the Bay Area. There was no active AFCOM chapter in the Bay Area. So trying to find a place to fit in and get connected and start building meaningful relationships was a challenge. And I guess it's probably been 2.5, 3 years ago, I met a woman named Jane Shea, who I know you both know because she's been on your podcast as well. She works for Aligned Data Centers. She and I met at a data center show and found out very quickly we had both gone to UC Davis and started talking about how there wasn't any place for women in data centers to get connected in the Silicon Valley area, and trying to figure out a way to get something started. So fast forward a couple of years, AFCOM was restarting in the Bay Area and was willing to support us in starting a group for women. And so that's where Silicon Valley Women's Innovation Lab was born. And our focus is really helping women in the data center space, helping them grow, helping them find mentorship, helping them find the path for them to not only stay in the data center space, but thrive in the data center space.
Now, one of the interesting things that we start the conversation is the fact that half of your class, meaning women, decided to leave the program. We've got two challenges at hand as it stands right now. For starters, to expose the sector and bring people in. And I'm going to narrow it down just to women, but it's also retaining them in this space. We have not done as a sector a good enough job to say, okay, this is a career pathway. These are the courses you need to take. These are the jobs that you need to put yourself in. These are the uncomfortable situations that you need to be a part of. What do you think, based on your experience, that we need to do starting today to get the level of excitement for women in particular to be a part of the sector, and as well in retaining them and excelling in their careers?
Oh, so I think it's a couple of things. I think the first of which is making sure women know that there is a path for them if they want to be a mother as well, to be a mother and be in the data center space. Unfortunately, I hear too many stories still in the data center space of women having offers rescinded or maybe not even offers extended to them. I've seen offers rescinded when they find out they're pregnant, or I don't know if offers aren't extended because they think they may get pregnant or want to have a family. So making sure that there is a pathway that allows women to be mothers and work in this space. The second thing is really having a clear path for mentorship and coaching. That I see women who they don't see anyone in higher level positions, or they don't have access to that to be able to have discussions of what the path looks like. That I've seen women who are in fairly high positions within their companies, even hyperscalers, that they don't see that there's anywhere to go. So they're more likely to switch industries if they see a path that allows them to grow in a different industry versus stay in data centers. Those would be the two things that I think we really need to focus on for women.
Yeah, but then there's commonalities in other sectors as well. Not that I'm trying to put data centers on a defense or the tech sector on a defense over here, but don't you think the similar issues apply in other sectors and verticals as well?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There are there. I would say that you fight those no matter what the sector is. I would say in data centers, we tend to talk a lot about getting and retaining talent, but then when the rubber meets the road, I'm not saying everyone, it's certain companies and certain groups that tend to not stand behind it the same way, in my view.
I think
Uh,
it's well said and way too diplomatic. But
yeah,
there,
I thought I was going to hear names over here and says,
yeah,
you know who you are.
right, yeah, no doubt. Look, I think you're 100% correct. Particularly, the point about us highlighting the stories and of women in the sector, women that have been successful, and that road that has been paved. Highlighting it is super important. What we've done a number of speakers panels, and one of the ones that we did at a high school in Mountain View, Los Altos, so kind of Northern California. Jane actually came to that speakers panel. But the one thing that we really tried to focus on was to create a real cross section of who we had on that panel, because the credibility inevitably comes from people that look like you, that have a similar lived experience, that have a similar background, similar ethnicities and genders, and et cetera. And I think the more it's not being preached at by, as our friend Amy Marks calls it, the stale, male, and pale old guard, the more we can kind of open ourselves up and not be on the defensive or not sound like, as I'm preaching, preachy. Oh well, I'm part of the problem. I'm trying to make myself into the minority. Although there's not that many bald people.
Well,
There are too
I
many.
think you are a minority, Phil.
Yes. Yeah, definitely on this call.
One of the things that stands out, Melissa, that you've been with the same company for over 10 and a half years.
Okay.
And we don't really see that culturally speaking, not in our space, but generally speaking. How have they been able to retain you and keep you going? What have they done differently that, like, you wake up in the morning, okay, I'm going to build the next data center. I want to be a part of this conversation. And why do I want to stay with this company? Because there's plenty of other opportunities.
Or
Uh,
tell us that you're moving on.
no, but
This could be the notice. This is the notice, guys.
Yeah, you have been served.
And so I should go back to how I ended up at Belimo. I was a Belimo customer before I came to Belimo. And so I knew their culture. I liked their culture. The woman that I came to work for at Belimo when I first started here, I had known for most of my career. So I came primarily to work for a company that I believed in their culture and to work for her. On the other piece of it, going back to wanting to be a mother as well. At the time I made the switch to Belimo, I just gotten married. I'd been very open with the company that I wanted to have a family, and they were completely supportive of that. And so that's when you talk about retaining talent, that was a big part of it. Belimo is a Swiss company, so they operate a little bit differently, I would say, than most American companies in that respect from a family perspective. So we work as hard as anyone, and sometimes I would say harder just because of the hours we tend to work, but they're supportive of the family dynamic and me being able to be a mom and do my job as well. From a growth perspective, that's the other piece, is they're big enough to be able to have growth potential and being a global company. So that's what I really like about where I'm at as far as having that mix of being able to have a home life and be able to be challenged and grow at work as well.
So a part of the culture is to be empathetic, right? Not work people like slaves and expect to be available 24/7 a day.
Absolutely. I'm available about 27, but
That 4 hours, you get 4 hours to yourself.
about how it goes. No, and it is. I would say from my view, that's one of the advantages to working for a global company is because the hours can be a little different depending on when you're on calls. It's not abnormal for me to start calls at 4 a.m. because I'm having calls across the globe. But then if I need to take my son to baseball practice at 4 o'clock or 3 o'clock, whatever it is, it's not a big deal. So being able to have some of that flexibility as well is something that for me personally, I find advantageous.
Do the Swiss play baseball? I don't think I've ever seen a Swiss baseball player.
No,
Yeah.
not that I know of.
Right. What is baseball? We don't even know what you're talking about.
They'll make a chocolate for it.
Cheese and chocolate. Cheese and chocolate. Look, I've always been, it seems so, you put your finger on it in terms of like creating a culture where people can live their lives and make themselves available as needed. And it seems so obvious, right? It seems so obvious that what you should do is you should allow people, the freedom to kind of integrate the workday, figure out what they need to get done, get their stuff done, however they need to do it. And if they are getting it done, if they are performing on whatever metrics you put forth, what difference does it make if they're in the office or on like available because some green dot is on their in-office thing from 9 to 5 or 8 to 4 or whatever? We are beyond, it's not just that you work for a global company. We are a global economy now, right? There is no place that is 9 to 5 means nothing because everyone other than the people in the New York metro area are in a broken time zone. Like it doesn't make any sense. I don't even know why other time zones exist. It should only be 9 to 5 Eastern Standard Time. But if that's not going to be the case, then it doesn't matter. You're available when you're available, and we're all tethered to the office all the time now because of this technology that we take for granted that's magically delivered to us through these clouds. So I never understood. I still don't understand. I know that there's a lot of conversation about people, CEOs wanting you to come back to the office now and wanting to reinstitute some of those things and kind of moving away from the hybrid because people take advantage of it. And I don't see it from a productivity standpoint. I certainly don't see it. And I get some of the arguments around it, but I think inevitably as a society, we are a mobile people. We are all nomads in one way. That's not a self-plug. We are all nomads in one way or another. And that doesn't seem like that's going to change. I don't even know what the question was. Oh, if you were in Switzerland, do they make you come to the office? Like, is there an office focused environment there?
So we have an office there and it depends on the role. Some of the roles they have to be in the office a certain number of days just because of the nature of the work and that I'm going to say what I'm going to call the true engineering that they actually need to have test benches and other things. But in general, most of our offices have some type of hybrid work schedule. For those of us on any of the sales team, we are all 100% remote. For the US, Belimo only has 2 offices and we have people spread out everywhere. So I've been 100% remote since I started with Belimo 10.5 years ago.
I have to imagine that that's a difference between our industry and others, right? I don't think we are so like get back to the office right away, as hyperscalers and vendors. And obviously, if you're a data center technician or you're a data center engineer or you're someone that needs to be on site because you're a mechanic or whatever, you have to be physically there. But I think when you're hearing about these CEOs that are driving back to office, you hear about it in the more traditional industry verticals, finance and legal and real estate and some of those.
Well, and I think we're at that point of time as well that it's the change of the guards as well. The old people, okay, not to be discriminatory in any way, form, or shape here. Phil, we classify as old people as well.
We're gonna get fixed. It's always someone. The one thing I've always found is there's always someone older. There's always someone younger, and there's always someone older.
The older generation, I used to say that they used to measure their success by the number of cars in the parking lot or the number of bumps in the seats in the offices. That's certainly started to change quite a bit, and particularly in our sector, where we start to measure success by KPIs and performance to people. At the end of the day, the most important thing, and what you alluded to earlier, is the fact it's communication, it's culture, and it's respect and being empathetic, right? and trusting people. That's the most important thing. And I believe as a society, we are right at that chasm that we are ready to make that change, hopefully, and not deferring back to what we thought was the norm. Talking about all of this, could you share, knowing what you know today and based on all the experiences that you've had, what would you do differently if given an opportunity?
Oh, I wish I would have known about data centers 20 years ago. I don't know that I would have had the appreciation for it that I do because I had gone through the other steps. But had I known, I would have gone into data centers intentionally much earlier in my career, just because I think the challenge of it and the ability to contribute to a better world through data centers, through how we build them sustainably, is so different than other types of engineering for HVAC. That's the one thing I wish I would have known then and done differently.
Sounds like a pitch for I wish the Nomad Futurist Foundation existed when I was a kid.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that could be a tagline. How about how many kids do you have? We never actually got into that.
I have two. I have two boys. They're 9 and 6.
All right. So perfect audience. What do you tell them what mom does and or what this space is all about?
So I talk to them about data centers, obviously talking to them in terms that they can understand of when they want to watch Netflix, what makes that work? When they want to play Minecraft, what makes that work? Obviously, they don't understand the big picture of just how big they are, but try to talk to them about it. Fortunately, since the things Belimo makes are small enough, I have them in my office. So they actually get to play with things. They wire them up. I'm trying to definitely help them understand how things work at an early age. And particularly my oldest, I won't be surprised if he follows a similar path as I did.
Brilliant. We've got a mechanical engineer in the making.
I think I had my kids. My kids were I've run data centers my entire career, right? So my kids were in their strollers going through rows of cabinets. I Steam talk for my son is 11. For my son's elementary school a couple months ago, I was just trying to find the picture. And I had like the picture that I put up in the class was him as like a 2-year-old standing in a row of cabinets just to contextualize it. And if you ask my kids to this day what I do for a living, they will tell you that I talk on the phone all day. So it's basically the same thing I would have used to describe what a 976 operator does in the 90s is what my kids think I do for a living still. So I'm not very
Again, narrative. But Phil, on a positive note, they will have a good muscle memory.
right.
Melissa, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. What a wonderful story, and hope to see you soon at one of these events. And maybe we can get Phil to be the city slicker riding a tractor.
I think there should be a follow-up there. I think we should do that for sure. Thank you so much, Melissa.
Thank you for having me.
This has been great. Nothing lasts forever. Markets will come back, currencies will rebound, businesses will go on, and we will all move on. That could happen next week, next month, or next year. At Nomad Futurist, we're confident that those who prepare rather than panic will come out of this stronger. Thank you for joining us. This has been brought to you by Nomad Futurist. Check us online at nomadfuturist.org. And thank you for listening and subscribing, as well as your continued support.